Hi and welcome back to Tag Lab. Today I'm delighted to have my two very entrepreneurial sisters joining me today, Hazel and Fiona. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And I should say welcome back because we did an episode together a couple of weeks ago, which was so much fun. And we talked about entrepreneurship and we talked about families and we talked about resilience and all of the things that we probably discuss as a more close-knit group. But we were able to share a lot of our learnings and it was great fun. And we just felt that we had so much more to talk about. So we wanted to continue the conversation today and dive a little bit deeper into some of the topics that we didn't have time for. So I wanted to spend a bit of time today covering the topic of taking risks and how that can pay off and just kind of developing the mindset to do that, because I think that's something that's really hard to do. So to kick us off, I wanted to ask both Hazel and Fiona, what is a risk that they have taken at some point in their careers or their businesses that they look back on and they really cringe when they think about it? I think we're all quite like risk forward and we learn a lot from those, but there's maybe one or two that stick. So Hazel, I will start with you if you want to take us back to one of those examples.
Well, the thing I thought about was back in secondary school. So there was a talent show and I entered it with my friend doing a gymnastics performance in front of the entire school when I was in first or second year, I think. And we wore gymnastics leotards and I had one of those like rhythmic gymnastics ribbons, and I thought like that people were just going to be wowed by our performance. And I remember they had to pull mats onto the stage. I remember thinking, oh, the audience will be like, here they come. This is it. This is their amazing performance. And now I think back and I absolutely like cringe. I'm not really sure what the payoff was at the end of that. But then I was thinking, well, because we did that in front of the school when you had to stand up and do your solo talk in English class or whatever, that didn't really seem as daunting. So maybe it was like, put yourself out there really big and then everything else just seems a wee bit easier. That was my first thing.
Yeah. And even just getting yourself onto that stage, I think lots of people will be like, no, I'm not doing it. It's too embarrassing. And I think to have the confidence to get up there, even if later you think, oh my goodness, what was I doing? That's the hardest thing to
before
overcome.
We went on, I thought, oh, I think this is a mistake. And he went on and did it. Yeah.
That's good. Fiona, what about you?
Oh, mine is way. Well, is it worse? I don't know. Mine is actually quite recent. I think, again, we could flip it either way, and it could be like, go after what you want, and that's the right thing to do, or it could be like, you're just an absolute idiot. So I was at Gleneagles. I was pregnant with Jake, so maybe like 2 years ago. And before Toby and I had got there, I had seen on Instagram that the editor of Sheer Luxe, which is like a really, like one of my absolute favourite brands, definitely my favourite business to follow on Instagram, and I love all of their content that they create, and I think they just absolutely nail it. And I would like to think we are very aligned in the sort of clients and viewers and readers that we would share. So when we were on our way, I saw that the editor of Sheer Luxe was also at Gleneagles, and she is from London, and I was like, oh my goodness, what are the chances that she is at Gleneagles when I'm at Gleneagles? I'm going to talk to her and I'm going to make her come into the Notting Hill clinic. And Toby was like, oh, like, cool, whatever. But anyway, I have never stopped anyone so hard. And then I couldn't find her, so I'd written her a letter, which I decided to leave it at the front desk for her so that she was then going to be wowed through paper. But I was like, I'll find, and we were just about to leave, and I saw her walk out of breakfast with her husband. And I was like, oh, it's my moment. And I cringed so much thinking about it. I went over and introduced myself and was like, hi, like, I love Sheer Luxe. And people must do it all the time here. So I was like, oh, hi. She was very polite, very nice. And I said, like, oh, I've written you this letter, and gave it to her still. And had said, like, we've got a clinic in Notting Hill. We'd love for you to come in. And I said, oh, just to be extra keen, I've also sent you a message on Instagram. Blah, blah, blah. We'd love to have you. Never heard from her.
Oh,
so, it maybe didn't quite work, but the hustle was absolutely there. But I think, oh no, that's so awful.
But do you know what? Like, I bet she remembers that. So even though it is a bit embarrassing, I think that you've maybe created something memorable.
Exactly. And weirdly, so that happened, and then years later, so actually really recently, a couple of months ago, I was getting off the Heathrow Express, and someone walked past me and bumped into me, and I didn't even really notice because it was just busy, and it was her, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to chase you again.
Yeah.
But I didn't. She was rushing. But there is now, actually, weirdly, our brand and marketing manager had a really beautiful wedding in Mallorca, and they asked Simone if they could feature her as their bride of the month. So she did credit us for her treatment. So fingers crossed, a little light bulb moment for Charlotte.
The stars will align there for sure.
Exactly. They're still on our hit list for sure.
I was thinking about my cringy moments, of which there are many, many to choose from. But I was thinking back, because recently I was driving to Dundee where we were seeing our grandma. And I remembered that maybe, I don't know when this must have been, maybe this is like 15 years ago actually. And I was trying to get a job, and I was really desperate to work in media, and I would just apply for any job that kind of came up. And I applied for an editorial position at a famous kind of youth magazine, which you need like significant years of like working as a journalist and like be able to edit and have a level of gravitas that I was basically fresh out of uni, had no experience, had like spent a little bit of time writing articles for this magazine in New York, but maybe I had like 3 pages to my name or something like that. And I went to this interview, and I was just kind of like bigging up all my experience. And the interviewer was obviously thinking, how did this girl get through our interview process? Like, she's not even done anything. She's not even had a job or anything. And I just like bluffed and blagged my way through the interview and spoke about how I'd done these like interviews at this like boat show in Long Island and all of this. And she was obviously like, now knowing what I know, if somebody came in to interview for a really senior position and they hadn't even had a job, I'd be like, just what a massive waste of time. But there I was, kind of left early in the morning and like all dressed up, and mum's like, good luck. It's just so far beyond what was reality. So yeah, I do cringe thinking about that moment and what that woman thought and told her colleagues probably at the lunch break. But I suppose out of all of those stories is building on what we spoke about the last time of like being able to put yourself out there and not worrying so much about the fear or the embarrassment, which was definitely something that our parents were big on. They were like, go for it, even if you might potentially fall on your face. Like, you learn something from that ability to get on the stage or put yourself forward for the job or reach out to the person, which, you know, if you overthought that too much, would probably just be too embarrassing to even do. So I think I am grateful for that mindset, even though it does give you some cringy stories.
Yeah.
So building on that a little bit and where we kind of are today, both of you run super successful businesses. We've all been in business for longer than 8 years, which is the kind of statistic that a lot of businesses don't make it past for a number of reasons. And I think it's amazing to have more female founders and model that for other people kind of starting out in business. I'm interested to see now, knowing what you know, how do you think you've approached risk in business, and how do you continue to approach that, and has your mindset shifted as the years have gone on? So I'll start, Fiona, with you to take that one.
I think there's definitely parts of the business that I'm happier to take bigger risks with, and then there's areas that I'm less inclined to take any risk with at all. I think, like, with your hires and the staff that you're choosing, earlier I would have thought, oh, they're nearly right. We're getting there. They seem good, or not that many people have applied, so I'll just have to pick out of this bunch that maybe nobody's quite kind of aligning with the skill set we need. Whereas now I think I'm so specific with who we hire and what we need that person to be able to deliver. And I think that real, like, just go with your gut. If it's not right, or if there just is even the tiniest little niggle, that niggle's going to become big and you're going to really quickly realise you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat. So I think with staff, I actually take less risk. I think it's maybe so much I didn't even think of it as risk. I think it's just knowledge. You just don't know that that's maybe not going to pay off in the way that you're hoping it will. It doesn't ever seem to go the other way, and you do become really impressed with them. It always seems to kind of just confirm your initial thoughts or worries on someone. I think, like, in terms of risk for other aspects of the business, financial risk, I'd say I'm a lot happier to take those risks. We've just taken on debt to grow the business and add another 2 clinics to our group, which is great. And I feel because you have those years behind you and you can see the success and you can see the brand build and that kind of stability of the brand and that belief in the brand, not only from the team but from the consumer as well, I think that does make you feel more confident to take on that risk and to think, well, if we look at the figures and we look at how the other clinics have performed and grown, if we're going to mimic that in another city, you feel quite confident in the fact that we're going to be able to deliver that. And even though the numbers can look quite scary and the numbers that you need to make that happen, I think when you've got that data behind you and that experience of doing it and that bigger team that you know share the same vision and the same end goal, you feel much better about the big scary numbers that you're going to have to pay back.
Absolutely. And do you think that's got more kind of obvious to you, like having a family and taking big financial risks? Like sometimes that's something I think people would really struggle with. Do you think you've got more comfortable with that? Do you think you go faster, slower? Like how do you think that's changed since having a family?
I think I actually don't. I don't think it's actually changed the way I do it. I guess there's obviously more people to think about than just you, but I tend to think of it really separately, even though it's not, because it all comes down to me and I am the person in the family and the person in the business. But I tend, maybe it's just that I know if I think about it too much in that sort of context of, oh, you won't be able to provide for your kids or keep a roof over their head, then I know the fear is going to creep in there. So I don't really think about it like that. I think about it really separately. And I actually think, if anything, the more kids I've had, the more risk I've taken on. And definitely the more financial risk, way more financial risk than I've ever taken on before. I've taken on in the last 6 months. So I think it's just knowing you can do it, and knowing that if you give it your all, there's no reason why it can't perform the way that other parts of the business have. So yeah, I don't actually think it has changed. I think it's probably got more of a comfortable position to be in, but I don't think that's related to having more children. I just think it's due to having more experience in the business and it getting bigger and bigger.
Good. Mm-hmm. Hazel, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like what you're saying, having more experience, it just gives you that confidence and that courage to take a wee bit more risk because you can see how it's played out before. And I think the more times you do that, the more reassured you are and the happier you are to take bigger risks and feel comfortable with it. I think as well, like you're saying, like putting in the work. So I try to be as organised and over-prepared as much as I can, sort of for every eventuality when I'm going to take a risk. And then at least well, I've done everything in my power to make it work, and then if it doesn't get over the line at the very end, then it was not meant to be. But I suppose you just do everything in your power to make it a success, and then if it doesn't work, you couldn't have done anything else.
And looking back, what do you think were the big risks that you took in your career along the way?
Do you know, I was thinking one of the big risks was when I moved to London. I had 4 weeks I was moving to house sit for someone, and this is just after I'd finished training as a dancer, and then I felt like I was at a real fork in the road of, in Glasgow the dance scene is small, there's no work there. So I thought, well, if I don't move, I don't work, and I would need to kind of veer off and do something else. So it kind of seemed like not even a choice. So I moved with 4 weeks, and I thought, right, I've got 4 weeks to get a job, to like go to every audition that I possibly can, to work and to find somewhere else to live at the end of this. And that was a big risk, but actually that paid off massively, because that was the reason that kind of started my whole career, and then on the trajectory of then opening the dance school and running it all as a business. And I could have easily not done that. But yeah, I remember the phone call really clearly of when someone said, "Oh, I have a place for you to stay for 4 weeks?" And I was like, yeah, jumped at it. And I suppose that, like, when you're younger, that's the other thing. The older you get and the more experience you have, you're better at taking calculated risks, because you're like, I know how that's going to go. I know how much time that's going to take. I know how much money that's going to take. I know how much manpower that's going to take. Whereas when you're younger, you're just more naive, so you're maybe willing to jump in a wee bit more. And then after it, you're like, oh, actually, that was far more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But I don't know, I suppose there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, you don't really have the overheads or the responsibilities at the early stage. You just need to take the leap, like, what's the worst that can happen? And usually the consequences are not too drastic. Maybe you're a little bit embarrassed or a little bit bruised, or you get some pretty hard no's, but actually there's no kind of catastrophic consequences. I think the risks actually get bigger, but you're right, you can handle it more because you've learned and you've tried stuff and you've failed.
Or it's like you've said before, when things go wrong in work, even if it's a new thing that's gone wrong, it actually is just the same problem, but disguised or shaped in a different way. And I try and think of that now when I come up against something, because I think, I've dealt with something similar to this. It just looks slightly different. So that makes it feel a wee bit less scary if it's a different client or if it's a different issue or a different problem. We think, I've dealt with this level of problem before, so we can deal with it again.
I was going to say as well, like, I think the thinking about having a family and risk, like, I weirdly, both times I've been pregnant, I always think, like, nothing focuses the mind like pregnancy. Like, I think weirdly, I'm like, I know exactly what I want, and I'm like ready to like graft, even though I'm so exhausted and normally feeling sick. But I don't know what it is. I think there's something about, like, I want to get it bigger and bigger and bigger as my family's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there must be, that's obviously aligning in some way that you want to provide for them and you want it to grow for them, because then you can, have a nicer life with them. So I think it's it's calculated risk in that we've done it before and we know that it can pay off and we know that it can deliver. So there must be some sort of link there that we're thinking, right, well, if I can make this pay off, and we have 4 clinics that are working really, really well, that's obviously much better than just having 2. So I think with like the family aspect of it, you're not doing it blind, but there's something about that's obviously motivation and drive for you to provide for other people.
I think the fact that there's an end date to pregnancy, like, I think that there's a finite date and you're not going to be able to work the same way.
What's that called? Where you said before, Laura?
I think it's Parkinson's law. And it's like... Yeah, so like, say you've got a task to do and your laptop's got 12% of battery, you'll do it before the 12%. And I kind of think that's true with pregnancy. Like, I think all of us have been in that stage where, right, we just need to get this thing done before the baby comes. And generally we have, even though we've had some kind of earlier than expected babies along the way. But I remember in particular Fiona, like, working just like an absolute maniac before she had Jake, to try and get the business in the best position so that she could take a couple of weeks off, which probably wouldn't be maybe advised from a health point of view, but I understand, like, the singular focus to then give you that time back with the baby. So you're like, okay, I can do loads while the baby's kind of inside, but then once the baby comes out, you can't really do that anymore. I remember it myself, like, travelling up and down to London and being like, right, I'll do all of this and I'll squeeze all of this in before the baby comes, which then ended up being 6 weeks earlier than anticipated, which threw my plans a little bit. But I was really, really focused on the big things I had to do before the baby came.
Yeah, I can remember a doctor being like, just before I had Jake, I had another 2 trips to London planned, and she was like, he was growing really quickly, he was giant, and they were like, you really shouldn't. I said, can I go? And she was like, you can maybe go to like your working bear's den. I was like, oh no, wait, to London. And she was like, have you been getting on a plane? Like, she couldn't believe I'd been going. And I was like, yeah, I was in London yesterday. And she was just like, what? Like, no, you cannot leave this city. I was like, oh right, okay, sorry. Okay, it's So it's bizarre, but the focus I always think is like nothing else. It's getting all the money in while you can.
Yeah, no, I completely kind of empathise with that. And then what do you think, we kind of touched on a little bit the last time, I think Fiona, you said like our parents weren't necessarily big risk takers, but created quite a stable environment. What do you think in our upbringing kind of enabled us to go and take these risks?
I think again it was just that like really secure, really loved, really like nurturing family like setup that we had, which at the time you don't even realize you've got it until you're reflecting back on it. But it's just like creating, it's like what they say is like how you make someone, they'll remember how you made them feel, not what you said to them. And it was just that like real feeling of like security, love, like confidence and kindness. I always think like you never felt stupid. Mum and dad were always like amazing no matter what you did. And I think as well, like, I don't know, like they used to embarrass us too, like dancing in shops. They were silly and fun, and I think like nothing was taken too seriously. Like they were such good sports, I always think, and I think like having that as a personality and a character trait, I think takes you so far. Like being able to take a joke really well, being able to be fun and relaxed and good company. I think like all of those skills really, really set you up, and I think they were all of those things. Like they were good entertainers, they were really chatty people, they were like really fun and positive people to be around. So I think all of those things feed into what's important in a leader as well. Like someone who's able to lead has to be all of those things and be good company and be people who are pleasant to be around and that you want to be around more. So I think it was just creating that really lovely environment. But if you think of their careers, they're not people that were entrepreneurial or, you know, even were like, I feel like mum was so family focused. She had a good career, but like, you know, we absolutely came first. There's not like a doubt in my mind that she was working so hard for us. You know, it wasn't always probably for her that she was doing it. So yeah, I think it's just, we were so surrounded by that support and that really hard work ethic and, you know, like turning up. You don't phone in sick, you work hard, you're there, you're a pleasure to be around. Like we were never allowed to be like stroppy or grumpy or gassy. That just never would have flown in our eyes. So I think it's all of those things that just stay with you, and that just becomes who you are.
I think pushing you out of your comfort zone a little bit, like even when it comes down to the small things. Like I always remember in restaurants, you know, if we wanted another drink or something, mum and dad were like, that's fine, you can ask for it. And I'd be like, oh, please don't make me ask. But like those are the kind, and now I do it to my children. I'm like, yes, but you need to go and ask. And those kind of things, just even though it maybe feels a bit uncomfortable at the time, it kind of builds that, I don't know, that confidence. And like you say, yeah, just constant encouragement and to go for things and to try and to work hard. And mum was always like, you know, you want to win and you want to be the best and you need to work hard to get this and blah, blah, blah. But then on the flip side, if it didn't work out, you know, not dwelling on it too much. Never mind, try again next time, try harder next time, and then you move on.
Yeah, I think there was always like picking yourself up and dusting yourself off and not kind of labouring on these things or not letting that prevent you the next time.
Or making excuses.
Yeah, I think that, and it's always like, well, what can you have done differently? Because the only person you can change is yourself. It's really easy to blame everyone else or blame the weather or the circumstance, whatever it is, but it's much harder to take ownership because that's the only bit you can control. And I thought more after the last time that we spoke about things that mum and dad did, and I suppose they did take some risks. Like mum definitely, like she went to the Amazon and was like floating down the river in Peru, like helping do the teeth of the locals and all of these things, and they did push themselves to do certain things maybe a bit later, but created a really kind of stable environment initially. And I was thinking about a couple of things that mum did, and I remember she really would talk to strangers a lot of the time, and that's something that I think has helped me model, like speak to people, speak to strangers like they're just people and kind of guide the kids that way. And I remember like we were driving one day, it was pouring of rain, and she picked up just this little old lady and then brought this lady with us, and she had to like go to the bank and do some jobs. This lady was just in the car and we were chatting, and just it was all really nice. And I always remember that, like, you just never know what people are dealing with. And Mum obviously saw like that person needs help and just kind of brought her in. And that's like, now I try and talk to strangers quite
I
often.
remember, that's funny you say that. I remember quite clearly being in the Tesco car park and Mum talking to whoever, anyone, the person at the checkout, the person behind her, in the whatever, when she was putting her trolley back. And I remember I used to think, why is she talking to that person? Like, why is she talking to that person that she doesn't know? Like, I didn't understand, didn't really get it. But now I talk to everyone, and definitely since having kids, I'm like, you're just maybe like on your own for 8 hours while your partner's working. So then I would just chat to anyone. And someone said to me once, the key to happiness is to talk to strangers. And like, even if you just, like, when you get a delivery, if you just say slightly more than hello to them, apparently your happiness levels go up and you just feel calmer and better about yourself. If you have like, oh, how's your day going? All right, good, yeah. And it is true. I've tried to do it a wee bit more. I'll talk to anyone.
I think that's really true. Like, people just want to be seen, and if someone's, you just are like, oh, thanks, you did a great job on delivering that package or whatever it was. Like, it really helps people, I think, to feel seen. And I think I've been reminded more as I've got older, is like, you just never know what people are dealing with at any one stage, and you might see someone come in a bit of a mood or this or that, and it's always remembering maybe what is going on behind the scenes, which I think is really, really easy to forget, and just talking to people maybe resets that a little bit. So I think that's been helpful. And then the other funny thing that I thought about that Mum got me to do was, one time I was like, oh, I'd love to meet the Queen. And I was like 8 or something. And she was like, well, why don't you write her a letter? And I was like, okay. So I like wrote the Queen a letter. And I think I got a polite letter back or something like that. But it was just like, well, ask if she wants to meet you. And I was like, all right, I will then. So maybe, Fiona, that's how you got your idea for doing your letter to the Sherlock's. These are things that I remember, like, nothing's impossible, basically. So as I posted, Alex said we're limited only by our own imagination, which I think is so true. Okay, so moving on a little bit to the kind of prospect of fear in your decision-making process, because I read once, like, all of our decisions are ultimately guided as coming from a place of fear or a place of love. So whatever the decision is, you can probably split that into one of two categories. So it's really, really hard. We're 10 times more likely to be impacted by a negative thing than we are by a positive thing. Like, our profile for risk is just so high. So I suppose, how do you overcome that natural fear that creeps in when you're making a big decision, and any kind of coping mechanisms for that?
I think sometimes it's quite difficult to differentiate between if you're feeling fear or nerves or adrenaline or feeling a bit anxious. Like, sometimes they physically feel quite similar things to you. And I was thinking that in the sort of job that I did before, so when I was performing, I got very used to feeling all of those emotions before I went on stage or before I went in for exams, which are all, it requires a lot of physicality. So I had to get good at recognising and managing what adrenaline was, what, feeling anxious or nervous before going on to perform. And I think repeating it over and over again, I got really good at, just managing that and like learning that on the other side, you always survived and it was always fine. And I think from that, I've got a really good gut instinct with if there is a risk or fear for something, knowing whether it's just that, I feel a bit nervous about it, or it's the apprehension of it compared to something like, this really doesn't feel right, I don't think it's going to go well, I need to change something, we need to go in another direction. So I think that can be quite important. And I suppose the coping mechanism is just doing it over and over again in as many ways as you can. And even though it doesn't feel very comfortable, I suppose it's like a skill, you get better at it.
Yeah, I think the same, actually, similar to that, in that, like, my early career, the risk was someone could die. Like, some people were really ill and you were looking after them in a really high stress, intense environment. So you just get used to working at a pace where, yeah, people are really, really unwell, and you need to help them, and you need to make that better, and you need to be really sort of aware of deterioration and really, really small shifts in people. So I think it is just that it's like your ability to notice these things, it's just all heightened, but you're not probably even that aware that you're operating in that way. But I think I was just, used to being in quite high stress situations a lot of the time. And then even when I started doing injectables, that can feel quite stressful. It's a lot of pressure, like someone's appearances in your hands. And I think that is stressful. It doesn't feel at all stressful anymore. But again, it's just that repetition. You get used to doing it, and that stress just neutralizes. And I think the stress that I feel now with work, it's really different in that it's more of decision making, but it's not life or death, and it's often not anything even practical. It'll be something that is just a business decision, not involving any patients. And I think it's that feeling of just getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and knowing that thing again, like if you're that, not like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, but that feeling of like if you're not feeling a bit uncomfortable, maybe a bit pushed and a bit stretched, like maybe you're not doing as much as you should, or maybe there could be more that you could be doing, or working a wee bit harder. So I think, like just now with the business growing really quickly, I have probably felt a bit uncomfortable for the past 5 months, and I'm going to feel uncomfortable for the next 6, definitely, maybe even longer. And that's a really big chunk of time to feel constantly a little bit worried and a little bit on edge, and kind of a wee bit being kept up at night, just crunching the numbers. So I think it's something just you're doing it more and more, and it just becomes part of life, and something that you just learn to handle. And it just, I don't know, I feel I handle it a lot better now, with way bigger budgets, way bigger teams than I did when I had 2 members of staff in one little tiny clinic. I worried way more then than I do now, but it's just seeing the same thing over and over again, and that those problems, that you think, I've dealt with this before, I know this happens, I know the business is seasonal, I know this, I know that, and you just grow in knowledge is power, and it just becomes more the norm to be in that little bit of state of fight or flight, I guess.
Yeah. And like you say, kind of knowing that when you're going into a new situation, like both of you identified, you are going to feel like that, whereas the first or second time you go into that, you're just in that state and you're not really expecting to feel that way. And actually, when you say, okay, I'm going to go into a new location, or I'm making a new big hire, or I'm going to launch a new product or service, emotionally knowing that you're going to feel like that, I think helps you prepare when you do feel like that, because that's inevitable that you will. And yeah, like you say, you kind of get that learned experience over time that you're less worried, because stuff will still go wrong, definitely, but worrying about it going wrong does you no good. And then most things are solvable. Like, it's never as bad as you think, and it's probably never as good as you think either. So I think kind of adjusting your expectations and staying in that neutral zone is helpful.
I really catch myself when you're brooding, like in your mind, so you're just
catastrophizing.
Like I think they'll say that, then I'll say this, then they'll say this, then I'll do this, and then I think I've made that all up in my mind. So I've got so much better at just like capping that and stopping it, because actually nothing has happened yet. So that can sometimes be the thing that makes you feel the worst, and you've just made it all up in your mind.
Totally. I think that monkey brain is that's like all of our internal kind of instincts, that you're protecting yourself from worst case scenario.
But don't they say, like, I remember it was for relationships, it said, like, if there's something that annoys you about your partner, you think, I'll say that to them, and then they'll say this to me. And so you have this internal argument in your mind, so that then when you do eventually say to them, this thing annoys me, you then snap straight to the end of your imagined argument, and it blows up before you've even had a conversation. So just trying to cut it off.
Or like
in the shower, having like a fight in my head.
I heard something recently as well, like if you're worrying about something, it'll probably be fine, and if you're not worrying about it, there'll probably be an issue. And I was like, that's actually quite a good thing to think. Like, so if you're like worrying, the kids be okay, this be okay, or you're worried about the business, or the team happy, or this or that, and you're like, do you know what, if you're worrying, it shows you care, and you probably are doing the right thing. So I was like, it'll be fine, because I am always thinking about these things, and can I do better, and you are then moving in the right direction of travel. And if you're thinking, it's all fine, I'm an ISO brilliant, then probably that House of Cards
I've
is
been
going
fired.
yeah, you're like, oh, that House of Cards is gonna topple pretty soon. So that's been quite useful.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on a little bit more to our specific personalities, and we have lots of similarities, I think, actually, in like a lot of the ways that we think, but we are quite different. And is there anything, so our birth order, I'm oldest, Hazel's middle, Fiona's baby, that you think has kind of influenced your leadership style? So whether it's personality traits or your birth order, I'm kind of interested if you think there's anything to uncover
you
there.
are definitely the leader as the eldest. Like, surely you must think that. We even joke you are our leader. But I think, like, even from when we were younger, like, the thing that springs to mind is when we were on holiday and there used to be kids' clubs. And I'd always want to go, and Mum would be like, "Well, you go then." I would not go unless you would go, right? And I'd quite happily go along if you were there to kind of like break the ice and lead the way. And then I was happy to be there, but I just wouldn't have gone myself. And then I was thinking, as we've grown up, you've definitely modelled leading. And I suppose it could maybe go in one of two ways. You could maybe think, oh, that's not my role, or I can't do that. But I feel like I went the other way. I felt like because I saw you doing it and you were always very nurturing and encouraging, I then thought, oh, I can do that too. And I now feel like I have learned like from your skills of doing that.
What do you think, Fiona?
I think I actually saw a video on Instagram the other day, and it was talking about like siblings, and they were talking about if there's three and like what roles they tend to play. And I paid the most attention to what they said about the youngest, but they said like that they're the entertainer, and I was like, oh right, I like that. But they said that like they're the silly one, and I was like, oh, what do you think? I think all of us are quite like silly, and I think obviously both of you are hilarious too, but I think like I was like, oh, that's funny. It was saying because they were always trying to, like, growing up as kids, you've got like two people that you're always wanting to like be in the gang with, like you're always trying to be like, oh, look at me, let me join in, like please, and you always kind of want to be included. And I was like, oh, I wonder like if we kind of feel that's right for us. And it said the middle one is like the scrappy one, like just kind of thrown in the mix a little bit, and the eldest one is the most academic and the leader and the problem solver
and the best.
smart and the best, absolutely.
Do you know, I was thinking though that the role modelling thing, I would have never started the company had me and Craig not been together, had he not seen his stepfather Gordon run his business to put that idea in his head. So I think that is a really valid point around role modelling and how do you create that for other people, because unless you see someone that looks a bit like you ahead of you, you would never, like, I don't think I would have thought to start a business had we not seen Gordon do that before. And, you know, like Craig's mum kind of setting that environment, and that we knew that that was a viable option for us. So I think that was, it probably goes a bit further. And I've never asked Gordon where he got the idea from, but I think that would be interesting, because then Craig's mum had a business, then he was like, oh, I could have a business, and then I was like, oh, well, I can help with that business, and then it kind of went all the way down.
I can have a business. It does. But I was thinking as well, like, being sort of like eldest, middle, youngest, and I was thinking, like, I feel like, and this is what I was going to say, I see it in my own children. So my middle child, so there's not much between her and her brother, kind of like similar to me and you, Laura, there isn't much between. And like you say, you're like so desperate to be involved with the older one that you like say, like you're saying, like, I'm scrappy, but you're determined to be able to do whatever your older sibling is doing. And so you become competent a lot quicker. And I think that I was thinking about that a few weeks ago, about how competence builds confidence. And so I see my middle child trying to keep up with her brother, and she's like way quicker, way more competent. And I think that definitely pushes you on. And then Fiona, you're saying like you're trying to keep up with number like middle and eldest. And I felt like I never really had like because I wasn't the eldest, I wasn't the leader, I wasn't the youngest, I wasn't the baby. So I felt as though I kind of had space to like kind of, I don't mean do what I want, but like kind of go the direction that I wanted, you know?
You are the free spirit. I think you're the more probably free spirited, but then very organised as you become an adult. I think you're extremely organised, like probably the most organised actually.
Yeah, you're definitely the most. But you were also a teacher. I feel that has to be like
Yeah,
you
that's
should be
true.
organised when you're a teacher.
I think definitely like I'm organised, like a planner.
Yeah.
Like
You
I
think
have
like
to be.
3 steps ahead, whereas I think maybe like 1 or 2.
It's like one behind.
Yeah, like
Oh no. Yeah, I think that. I think that like if you like the common personality traits, I think we probably do fit a lot of them. But I think our
Do you think do you think you've been like babied, or because you're the youngest? Do you think? Like,
No,
I
don't.
I didn't really think that.
Not really.
No, I don't really think. Also, I think like mum and dad would be like, that's stupid. Like,
you always say
you're
mum's
not gonna
hardest
baby
on
anyone.
you because she's like,
Mum is. Oh my goodness,
On
mum
Fiona,
definitely
are you
is.
joking?
No, mum. It's Hazel's little. She's all like, "Oh,
Me.
Hazel's got a cold. Hazel's got this. Hazel's got actually a very sore head." And I'm like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm going to go and help her." I'm like, "Right, cool." But no, I think mum. I don't think she's like. Yeah, I would actually. I think she's hardest on me. Hazel's
She's the
golden
least
girl.
sympathy for you.
She's the least sympathy for me. Maybe I'm the biggest whinge, but
The biggest witch.
yeah. No one's ever looking after me. But I would say that. I think maybe dad is maybe a little bit softer because I'm the youngest. Dad, I would say, is pretty soft with all three of us, like just because he is a dad of daughters. But maybe dad would maybe baby me a bit more, but.
I always thought our parents were really strict growing up, like really, really strict, and both of you were like, nah, not so much. I think I broke that boundary for both of you.
Oh no, I think they were both. I think they were both quite strict.
Yeah,
I think
thought they were very strict.
I suppose like you don't know any different. I don't really. Yeah. And then maybe I've forgotten. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think like I was quite I wasn't scared of dad ever. Like I felt like dad, you could like kind of wrap around your finger a bit, but mum, I feel like mum just had a look and you'd be like, oh no, like this is bad. I'm in trouble.
I'm trying to perfect that look for my own children, but it doesn't always have the same impact.
Had too much Botox. They're like so wrong.
Okay, right. So moving on to maybe a little more on that topic. So as thinking about that kind of subject of role modelling, and we have a variety of sons and daughters between us, 8, how do you try to encourage that bravery and confidence? I mean, I think that question typically comes around women, but I think it's just as important for our sons as well. So anything you're doing with the kids to try and have that same kind of bravery as they grow up.
I can't remember what it was. It was in one of our like Instagram chats with the three of us, and I can't remember who sent it, but it was saying like praise doesn't build confidence. Like they have to have like the skill has to be there, and they have to have like the gratification, like the competence of the task does. Just like praising them. So I really try not to just praise all the time. I think like it's not doing anything. That's just going to make them feel worse when they realise that they can't do it. Actually, last night I was thinking about this question, and you know the advert, I think is it a Dove advert, and they say to like the little girls like, run like a girl, punch like a girl, jump like a girl. And I did it with Olive last night, and I was like, run like a girl, and she was like, like running dead fast, and I was like, punch like a girl, I was like punching really hard, and I was like, oh, that's like, it was just making me so happy. I was like, oh, I love that you're like you're doing that. And then when it was the older girls, and they're like, oh, like this in the advert, but I'm like, oh, they're still, I don't know, I want her to always like think that is how a girl punches and a girl runs, because it is like, I want her to be like, we're just as strong as boys, and I can do anything, like not anything a boy can do, just anything, like it doesn't matter. I don't want it like sexes to even be in her mind with anything. I just want it to be like, I can do anything because I'm me. I don't want it to be I can do it, even if a boy can do it. Like,
yeah, I try and like step back. So I have one girl in the middle, and then older and younger boys, and I try not to kind of jump to help her over them. I just like and she can really like rough and tumble with her brothers. Like it's not an issue. Maybe because they're younger at the moment, but I don't try and be more cautious with her. I just try and let her run and jump and play the same as them. But then also I was thinking on the flip side, I also try and have the boys, you know, not just the boys are outside playing in the mud. You know, I make sure that they go to dancing and they sit and do artwork and they have more of a creative side and a more sensitive side and all of that. It works both ways. Like I want them all to be well-rounded or exposed to all of the traits and emotions, and then they can like decide where they kind of thrive and where they naturally sit in that.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And something I think you said before, Hazel, was you need to give them struggle time, which is something that I think about a lot when it's like, you know, watching them do up buttons, or like I say, okay, right, get your own drinks for dancing and rugby and all their activities, and just the process of like getting a cup and getting water, and it just takes like such a long time. We're like always kind of rushing to get out the door, but actually that is how you can help them be more self-sufficient if they have these skills and they can go and figure that out themselves. And the stuff that we're saying earlier about in a restaurant, go ask for a drink or go and ask for whatever it is. And I noticed Darcy now, who's getting a little bit older, just that bit more self-aware. And so the tendency is to kind of jump in and help them, but actually just to let them do that themselves, which is really, really hard sometimes to watch.
And isn't it like it really what you're doing as an adult is it's feeding your ego because you're needed and you can go in and help because that's easy for an adult to do, to go and help your child, whatever, button up their jacket or get them a drink. But really the more that they can do and be successful in, the higher self-worth they feel for themselves. I saw a parent saying that she will not let her ego be buffed by helping her children. She will find another way to do that as an adult. And really it's for their own good. But they have to do everything themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those things definitely help. For me, I think it's a time-saving thing. I don't think I'm like, oh, great, more people need me. I'm like, it's just quicker if I do this. But actually, long-term, it's not. But yeah, I think those little things. But yeah, like you say, they need to do everything. And I think having three the same, like for us, it's kind of mixed genders, and maybe just for convenience of family life, getting everyone to do as much of the same stuff as possible. Yeah. You know, you're not treating anybody any different. And they do naturally gravitate towards different things, I think, as they get older, but trying to reinforce that, being able to speak to people and like good manners and all of these things. Like I saw something, it's just like, make sure you respond if you get a compliment, because people say to kids, oh, like that was a great dance, or I like your jacket, or whatever it is, and they kind of say nothing. And actually you're like, no, say thank you. And just responding to these things.
Or like even simple things like walking into a room. I remember I read a book, Why French Children Don't Throw Food. It was so, like, it really changed my mindset. And one of the things that they're encouraged to do when they go into a room full of adults, which can be daunting to a child, is they are not allowed to stand behind their parent's leg and be shy and be this and that. They have to go in and say, hi, my name's whatever. And just simple things like that, like not letting them shy away, even though you think, oh, you want to sort of protect them, but no, making them, have a presence. Yeah,
because so often you hear parents answer, go, this is so-and-so. And you're like, no, let them say who it is. And I've noticed that more like since the kids go into sports, and you as a dance teacher have said, like the parents want to always be in and like see what's going on. And actually that creates a bigger issue than if the kids are just doing stuff themselves. And I was at rugby at the weekend, and a lot of the parents are doing the full rugby class. And I'm like, just let it go. Like they'll be fine. You're right there, you know, if they need you. But they will, if you do it all with them, then they'll never learn to do it themselves, which is maybe a wee bit harder. And same with dancing. I think, you know, it's like get out their way and just let them flourish.
Yeah, they don't actually need you. It's more like a parent's maybe insecurity to do it.
I also think parents worry what other parents are thinking. Like if your kid's crying and you're like, right, I'm off to the dance teacher. That is actually like they will settle much quicker, but then they're like, oh no, everyone here's gonna think I'm awful if I just go. Whereas I'm like, no, go, they'll be fine. Like they will settle.
Believe me, the teachers are like, great, bye.
Bye.
Then they could just settle them quicker, and then they learn quicker that this is it. Like that's what I was saying was, if you rescue your child all the time from an uncomfortable situation from a very young age, even if they're just a wee bit unsure of coming in or unsettled, what you're teaching them is yeah, that like sort of fight or flight. No, it's not safe. I will take you away. And if you feel a bit nervous or anxious about something, you can just run away from it. But actually, you want them to be able to work through that. So then they see, oh, actually, it was fine, and I can do these things. And step by step, they can do bigger things, take bigger risks, and feel confident quicker.
I was listening to Esther Perel talk. She was being interviewed about like what she thinks, like how future generations will be in the workforce, and she was saying one of the biggest problems with like our kids and the kids that will follow is that she called it like they don't play out. Like we were just like, you just played in the street with other pals and there was no parent to oversee anything. Everyone just figured out the problem because you were all just in the street until like the street lights went on or until your mum shouted you in for dinner or whatever it was. And she was saying like that, like peer on peer problem solving and like even like hierarchy and sometimes it's not fair, but she was like, that's what gives you grit and that's what makes you learn and that's what makes you confident and that's like all like you learn how to navigate like relationships and situations with people of the same age from such a young age. But she was like, that just won't happen anymore because that's like for the safety aspect or whatever it may be, but nobody does that anymore. Children aren't just like sent outside to play and to play with a group of children the same age. So that problem solving ability is like just completely disappeared from these future generations. And she was saying that was like a skill that no one even knew that they were gaining, but that is just something that's like will be like the last generation probably that had that. Like it doesn't happen in the same way.
There was a really good study, I don't know if I sent it to you or not, recently done where a group of teenagers gave away their smartphones and went on a camping trip for 5 days, like just as you would, kind of making fires and toasting marshmallows and put up your own tent. And it was a really transformative experience. And out of that, they have then kind of come back and gone into their normal lives and really reduced like their smartphone usage and they're connecting more. So the output was really that even if you have a few of these experiences, there is a longer term effect in your real life. So you won't necessarily just go back to all the smartphone usage, which is so damaging to, I mean, young people and teenagers and adults actually. And to try and figure out those experiences for your kids or teenagers, just, I think, show them that as much as possible, which won't be everybody, but it made me think I will try and create more of those experiences because I think some of the risk now is just a perceived risk. It's no more than when we were younger. It's just
see what I was saying. Like, it's not even safety. It's because everyone plays on Xboxes and iPhones and iPads. Like, I'm like, it's not even, nothing is less safe now. If anything, people are just going to be more aware of that. But it's the fact that kids don't want to play outside because they want to play on things. They don't want to play with other people. Like, that's what the problem is.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see changes, I think, with smartphone kind of usage and things in young people. And there's a bit of a change with parents not wanting to raise kids who just can't communicate, aren't emotionally intelligent because they're so consumed by these devices, which adults can't manage their usage, never mind kids. So hopefully there's a change there. Okay, and to close us off, how do you think you can inspire the next generation of female entrepreneurs?
Oh my God, that's a big ask.
I think, do you know, actually, I was thinking about this this morning, and for the first time in the last 6 months, 2 women who are both in the same industry as I am have asked for a meeting and for some advice on just like different bits and pieces of the business. And I think like I was so pleased and so happy to give that advice. And I thought like there was no part of me that thought, oh, I want to like gatekeep any of that, or I don't want to tell them this, or I don't want to tell them the commission structure we used. I actually thought I want to tell you everything because I want everyone to succeed, and you know, there's space for everyone, and there's enough patients to go around, there's enough clients to go around, there's room for everyone to really, you know, grow their own business and to have their own niche and to make something really special and long lasting. But I think it's like, I think when you think of men in business, there's no sort of spin on it that it's like catty or bitchy or this or that, whereas I think with women it sort of maybe gets a little bit of that feel because it's all female, and I want it to just feel like that women feel it's a like great space to be in, and that it's a really supportive space to be in, and you know, there's ample advice and experience to be shared. And I think that's it. It's just showing that it's a good space to be in, and that there's so much knowledge and support and space for everyone to flourish and to grow. But I think it's just, giving women the confidence to do it and to try it, and be an example that it can work.
You're right in saying like about not gatekeeping anything. I've joined a sort of community recently where everyone is very open, very sharing, very specific. You can ask questions and you will get examples and answers, and that has helped me so much. And I'm always very open and willing to help people because I ask for help, and so I'm willing to give it in return. And I think as well, I've been looking kind of more internally within the students in my team that I have, and I'm starting to train up some of my older students who are wanting to be dancers or open dance schools. And I thought, well, I could maybe offer them a little bit of experience, and then that's like the next generation kind of coming in, assisting, training, and then helping them go through the whole process. So I think it's just about being honest and open, and like you say, like there's room for everyone. There really is. I think that comes from a place of fear, like I can't tell anyone what I'm doing because I need all the business myself, and it doesn't really work like that. And everybody offers different strengths and things to their business, even if you are within the same industry. I think the more we can share, the better it will be for everyone.
Yeah. I completely agree. There's enough business for everyone, and it's having that mindset. And also, I think you could tell everyone every single thing that you did, but nobody could go and do the last 10 years, the blood, sweat and tears. Like I actually share everything because I'm like, I know what actually goes into executing that. And you can have so many ideas, but actually I'm not worried about somebody stealing it because they would always end up doing it themselves differently anyway, which I think is great and is the way it should go. So, been a really open book, and I agree, help other people, as much as you can. And if one person is like, oh, do you know what? I took a different path, or I went and spoke at this event, or I started my own little freelance business, or whatever they did, then I feel like you've had an impact on someone because of something that you did and something that you made up.
And also, I think it always comes back around. Like, that's something that I learn and see all the time. I think, oh, there was that person from 3 years ago that I spoke to at that training day, or there's that person that offered me an opportunity years ago, and then you're in a position to help them. And it really does, like, it's a small world. And people remain, like you said earlier, Fiona, people don't remember what you said or what you did, but they always remember how you made them feel. And I think that's so important, and it just keeps showing up again and again.
Yeah, and I think that is actually scientifically the number one thing that makes you most happy, is if you can provide acts of service to those around you and have quality relationships, you will be happy. So like, even if you think about doing something that's helpful to someone else, your happiness level increases. But if you actually go and do that thing, you feel so much better. So I think you're totally right. The more help you can give to people, the better, kind of more rounded you become, and then you feel like you're really being useful, which is the best thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time. That has been excellent, and we will share all of your links and all of your socials, and I look forward to the next conversation. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Tag Lab. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please make sure that you subscribe by hitting follow on whatever podcast platform you listen to so you can get the latest episode. Thanks.